And my tendency is when I feel good, I'm so extreme. Like I'm too extreme. I have a problem. Like
well, I mean,
can't,
dude, the name of this podcast is called Pretty Intense. So I get it.
There are times when I'd be worthy of that title. I'll wake up on a Saturday and I'll be like, I'm so glad I've got the whole day free. Like, because the last 5 days will have been insanity. And I'll be like, I've got the whole weekend. I'm not going to plan anything. And then I'll be like, I kind of feel like training today. I'm going to go train today. And I'll
same day?
Call up a trainer and I'll be like,
same day that you're so excited that you have time off?
Within probably an hour later.
I'll be
like, do you have any training? Yeah, okay, I booked that in 5 o'clock. Maybe I should like go on a hike.
Yeah.
And then I'll be
like,
a
nice relaxing afternoon.
You know what? I'm going to clear out the garage. I've been meaning to do that. And then before I know it, I have booked this manic day. And
This kind of sounds like something I might do. I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense. I'm really excited about today's episode with Matthew Hussey, or Matt. Let's just call him Matt for casual. We had a really cool conversation, and it was one of these really interesting episodes where I know his work so well, and he is an expert in the realm of relationships, and I just kept thinking to myself, what am I going to ask him, and where am I going to go with this? And he has just such a giant scope when it comes to that area of expertise. And before the episode, I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to let this free flow. And it ended up being the perfect thing because he's in his own sort of transition and alchemy of message. So we had a really cool conversation that I don't think that is going to be something that there's not a lot of it out there. But you're going to hear that relatability that maybe you yourself are going through where it's like, hey, things are changing or maybe things are going to change, or hey, I heard the things that are going on in your life and I feel similar. Maybe I'm about ready for a transition. So we had a great conversation, and I hope you leave feeling inspired and prepared to step into whatever it is that life is calling you to. It seems like because in hearing about your family and hearing about having a good relationship, that is probably why you can speak about relationships, is because you have a good one with your family.
I think there's some truth to that. There's Christopher Hitchens, who is a journalist and a writer. He actually said one of the big tragedies is that relationship wisdom isn't inherited. It doesn't get passed down through the genes. And therefore, you can have plenty of people who come from families with good marriages, or who witness their parents make horrible mistakes, but don't necessarily learn from those mistakes because there are some mistakes you have to make yourself, or you don't truly realize the pain of them unless you make them yourself. And of course, having parents with a great marriage is no guarantee that you won't make poor decisions. So, but I will say this, I grew up with a ton of love, and that helps. I think if you're really loved and you're shown what love looks like. Love
sounds like these birds right now. They're going crazy.
It's very idyllic.
Oh,
I'm expecting sort of fairies to start jumping around. And it's very sort of ancient, it's very Greek myth around us right now. I think when you have a tremendous amount of love, and that love, because you could go through bad times, you could go through, bankruptcy or financial hardship, you can have a struggle growing up, but if you still have love throughout that struggle, that I think is one of the greatest securities you can benefit from. Okay,
but describe that love. Because I think love can come in lots of different forms. Like love comes through, various attachments, through codependency, through all kinds of things. So when you say love, though, what is the idealistic sort of hope that you'd grow up with if you were to describe love?
Well, it's in my family, there's a good deal of healthy love, and then there's sort of me going home even now and my mum trying to stuff cake and sandwiches down my face.
Wait, that's not love?
that might be more codependence. I you know, she needs me to
so I feel good.
My mum needs me to need a sandwich. I still, there's a few of those remnants when I go home. There's, you know, my mum like trying to feed me, and if I say no, she's like, oh, go on, you know. And I know in that moment having a sandwich equates to you still need something from me. And of course I have to continue to remind my mum, I need you for more than sandwiches. You know, your actual love is the thing that I could never really, or would never want to live without. But I do think there are all sorts of, love is often masked by those things, the ways people suffocate each other when they don't have enough purpose in their own life, and when they're trying to figure out what they're about, or we just get validated from how we get love. You know, but I do, in my family, the one thing I was always very blessed with was if whatever I wanted to do, even if it was uncomfortable for the people that loved me, if they truly thought it was best for me, they wanted me to do it. Me coming to America was one of the hardest things in my life, which is why I could never truly tell myself I was moving to America. I came here originally because there was a TV show I did. And even then I told myself, 3 months, let's just see, you know, but I was excited by the notion of coming and being here. But I never really committed to the idea of living here. I always told myself, even today, I sort of tell myself, you know, we'll see. I'm enjoying it here right now. We'll see. But my parents, undoubtedly, it must have been incredibly difficult for them and my brothers for me to come here.
I thought you said it was difficult for you.
Both.
Or was it
Both.
Everybody?
Yeah, both. Because we're so close. We are a very, very close family. But it speaks to the love that is pure, that's there, that they would never have said to me, you're leaving us. Like, what? If this is good for you, go and do it. And my family's very much like that with each other.
It kind of reminds me, because I lived in England for 3 years when I was 16 to 19 racing. And it was hard, but they said, I can't imagine it would be even worse if you didn't have the opportunity.
Right.
So while, you know, my mom cried at night or, you know, I don't know. So I heard, but, you know, they were sad that I was gone, but they couldn't have imagined that it would be worse to not have the opportunity. And so it sounds similar. Is that
Very
it's
similar.
Worse that you didn't have the opportunity? It doesn't mean it's not hard, though.
No, very difficult. I mean, a lot of choices I've made have been difficult for my family. My dad was very entrepreneurial, but that came with its ups and downs when I was a kid. And my mum definitely felt those ups and downs. So when I came out of university and immediately, instead of going and getting a job, I slept on an office floor and said, you know, I'm going to start a business. I had this little tiny office in London. It was like a loft, an attic in a building in London. And I would sleep on the floor in that office. And I remember thinking I was impressing my mum, actually. I remember inviting her up one day to London to be like, look at my office space. And she came in and she saw the sleeping bag on the floor. And I didn't realize until years later, this was only a couple of years ago, she went home that night and cried to my dad. And I never knew that. At the time,
Our son is poor.
Yeah, well, I think it was too close to home for her. That, like, you know, we put you, you know, we went through all of these ups and downs, and now instead of going and taking a job and having a steady path, you're repeating this wild entrepreneurial life of, you know, we'd gone bankrupt when I was a kid a couple of times, and we got moved from a nice house to a trailer. And like, so I think for my mum, it was too like, why do you need to, like, can't you just go and it's not like I was even doing something that sounded promising. When I was 21, I was starting a company that was helping women in their dating lives. So my mum was like, this can't be the thing. Like, this isn't going to be the thing that's, you know, you're in a sleeping bag in an office, like showering in a sink. Like, this can't be
Wait,
life.
showering in a sink's pretty normal in England.
In the winter, I will tell you, it gets a
I've
bit
gone
chilly.
and stayed in places where there's only a bath, and then I have to
Which is essentially a big sink.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. And I I literally poured a cup over my head.
Well, don't make us sound that medieval.
But there are some places that are like
it's very
that.
Charles Dickens.
I was I was at racetracks in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure that had to do with it. But
probably.
But, so your first job was then, because I'm like super curious how you got to the point of being able to have such wisdom and perspective on relationships. But you said your first job was teaching women?
No, well, my first job was at 13. I was a pot boy in my dad's nightclub. I was like a...
Oh my God, this is how you can teach it. You've been on the scene forever.
I suppose. I didn't see much worth replicating in that environment, though.
So you also learn by things that you don't want. By learning what you don't want, you know what you do want.
I think the biggest thing I learned in a nightclub was why not to drink. That was the key takeaway there, is I just saw people on their worst behavior night after night. But I went on to DJ my dad was a DJ, and I went on to, at 11 years old, I bought my first pair of decks, and I started DJing in this nightclub at 14. And I was a late bloomer anyway, so I was tiny. I think my first experience with relationships was negotiating the world of adults, and, bouncers that were to me, they were titans. Sure. And the kind of clientele that would come and, threaten to punch me if I didn't play their song, or like I was very much in a world of smoke and beer and adults and learning how to negotiate. I was 14 when I started playing a warm-up set in the club.
That's about when they start letting you in the clubs in England, at about 14 anyway.
That's not far off.
It's not, because I'm pretty sure that my sister and I did that.
Yeah, it could be quite early. But I just, when I was like 11 years old, my dad, whether things were going well for us or not, he always had books. My dad really lauded the value of books. And wherever we were, whether we were in a makeshift trailer situation, trying to get back on our feet, or whether we were in a house, he always had a bookshelf, and there was always self-development on those shelves. And I was 11 years old when I picked up How to Win Friends and Influence People from my dad's bookshelf. Yeah. And even then, I picked it up because I thought the title, how ridiculous is this? That someone would need to win friends and influence people, and yet the other half of me was like, I really want to learn what's in this book.
I was kind of thinking it seems like something you'd want to know.
Well, at 11, it's a bit of a weird move. Right. I picked it up and I immediately was hooked. The idea that it was a revolutionary idea to me at the time, that you can be better with people, and the way you come across and the impact you make. That I was a shy kid, and the idea that you weren't condemned to your current level of confidence, to your current level of ability with people, to your current level of charisma. Even though I wouldn't have articulated it that way at the time, I remember it being this discovery to me. By the way, I didn't know that How to Win Friends and Influence People was a known book. I thought I discovered some kind of secret scroll that, like you went to Egypt recently, like you'd found a scroll in a part of the temple or the pyramid that no one had seen. Right. Like that's how I felt about that book. I was like, no one knows about this. Like I've got all these abilities now.
Have you heard of this book?
Little did I know it was a seminal
or you kept it a secret, maybe. I don't know.
Self-development classic. No, I remember actually specifically a girl making fun of me at school because I was reading it in like a break moment.
Oh, got it.
And someone being like, why are you reading that? But I genuinely was hooked. And the reason I mention it is because when I went into DJing and every other job after that, what I learned there and in subsequent books and what that set me on a path of was valuable to me in everything I did. It was the most transferable skill set I'd ever learned. And there was no part of my life, whether it was getting a crowd whipped up into a frenzy from a DJ stand, or coaching someone one-to-one, or giving a speech to a theatre of people in my work now. It was all born out of the same set of skills, and I've just been refining them ever since. And of course, trying alongside that to learn to be happy, because those two aren't the same thing. The competence of having impact and being skilled with people and knowing how to articulate a point or an idea to get it across, or all of those skills.
I want to break both of those down. So let's not forget about the be happy thing.
Yeah.
So then what was it from the book that, like, what's the takeaway if you were to say, this is how I
mean, I think in the beginning, I just would go and use that book. I would practice on teachers at school.
Practice what, though?
It could be anything from listening better to noticing something about them instead of making it all about me, to showing, when someone was arguing with me about something, starting by understanding their point of view before talking about my own, showing that I really understood them first. It was all the basic stuff. That book is timeless because it's fundamental, not because it's revolutionary. That's the great joke of it all. And I'm sure if I reread that book today, that there would be things in there that I've stopped doing, that I'd go, why did I stop doing that? Because that's the thing about the fundamentals. They are the easiest thing to stop doing, especially when you think you've gotten good at something. And we, through different phases of our lives, we do forget certain fundamental things. I mean, why is it that sometimes we can feel I was happier at 21 than I was at 31? Because maybe at 21, there was something different about your life. We could go on to achieve a lot, and that can detach us from certain truths, certain fundamentals. We can achieve a lot, and suddenly the world makes it all about us. The world keeps asking you questions about yourself, and now you become a worse listener, not because you chose consciously to become a worse listener, but because for a long time now you've been told it's all about you, or you've been, every interview is about you. So now you find yourself at a random dinner table expecting that you're going to talk about, like, the most interesting thing is you talking about you, when actually if you go back to what you knew at 15 or 18 or 21, it's let's make them the star at this dinner table. But I think it's all the basics are very easy to forget, which is why the biggest danger of the way we live right now, the greatest opportunity is the availability of information, right?
Totally.
It's also the greatest danger because we have so many voices, so many experts, so many podcasts, so many videos, so many of everything, that we can get lost in a sea of advice and forget that there's like 5 things.
Okay, what are they? You're great at lists. I mean, like, you're great at lists.
Yeah,
you are. You're like the 5 things, the 3 things, the 10 things.
Yeah,
well,
that's easy in an edited video. I was on the Today Show, and I literally said to Kathy Lee and Hoda, they said to me, Matt, what do you think about whatever the question was? And I went, well, Kathy Lee and Hoda, there's really 3 things you have to remember about that. I learned there and then, never on live TV give a number for how many things you're going to say, because that commits you to remembering those 3 things, which I didn't. I got to the end of the first one, and then I said, number 2, and I realized I no longer knew what number 2 was. Wow. And I literally said, I forgot what number 2 was. And Kathy and Hoda looked at me and she went, I could see that you forgot. And here was what I did, thinking this was clever. I went, no, I got it. Number 2. Now I thought that by saying that, I would remember. That somehow in me saying, like, I've got it, I would buy myself a moment to then have it. I still didn't have it. So then I got to the end of that sentence and went, yeah, I still don't remember. And she goes, let's move on.
Perfect. What are some fundamentals that you do, like, every day, like today, tomorrow, like in your daily activity that are so ingrained in you from reading that book and from practice, and that what are some of them that you're trying to implement? So like what's established, what's subconscious programming, and what is in the conscious mind that you're trying to integrate?
I think so. From that book, I think about it less and less in a sense, because a lot of like coming here and doing a podcast is home in a way, right? Like that's you could put me on stage and say, Matt, the audience is just going to fire questions at you. And on live TV, whenever you go on TV, the producers always come to you and they say, here's the questions that people are going to ask you. And I'm like, I don't want to. You can tell me there if you want. It makes no difference to me. I'm
the same.
I'm good.
I'm like, in fact, don't ask me because I'd rather not know, because the most spontaneous answer feels nicer.
Which also speaks though to the fact that you've built that skill set, over time, whether consciously and directly, or whether it's just because the amount you've been exposed to the limelight.
Same.
You've built that. So for me, I don't think as much about that. I do think I'm always looking to refine. Like we can talk about that differently, but I'm always looking at things in my speech. For example, now, one of the things I really think about a lot is, did I use too many words to say that? Instead of thinking, you start out in public speaking and you're constantly in the mode of, have I got enough to say? That's always the fear.
How am I going to fill all the time?
Right. Now I'm the reverse, because that's not been a problem for me for years. So now I think, am I using up too much time to say what I need to say? Can I say it quicker, more efficiently? Can I say it better? But aside from those tweaks, I think more these days about the fundamentals for me these days are, what are the things I need to do each day to be happy and to bring my best to my life and to the people around me? Because I don't think it's all about my happy. I'm actually not one of these people that thinks the goal is to be happy all the time. I think we have an obsession with being happy, and whilst I think that experiencing happiness, I think firstly, happiness is a cloudy concept. There's different versions of happiness. A lot of people equate happiness to pleasure, and those two things aren't the same thing. Like someone recently said to me, because I was complaining about, a stressful day, and they were saying to me, it should be fun. And I was like, really? Like, where did you get that idea? I just don't agree. Like, when someone says something like that to me, I'm like, sometimes, like this is fun, but
good.
This is different. This is not me like laboring over my book this morning, or trying to how does this? That's tough. Like, I'm sure being a race car driver wasn't always fun.
Right.
Challenging.
Totally.
You do it a lot, and there's a kind of quiet fulfillment that comes from doing hard things. That's not the same as fun.
That's exactly right. I remember my last race, the Indy 500, and somebody said, are you having fun? And I was like, fun? I was like, fun is being drunk. I was like, I'm out there at 240 hoping that I keep it on the track. Yeah. I'm like, no, it's not fun, but it can definitely be rewarding. Like it can in a different way, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's fun. And so I totally, exactly.
So I really want to bring my best self to my life. Whether it's to my family, my friends, my work, and to myself. And I do, more than ever in the last few years, I am more and more aware that being happier, being less stressed is a version of energy that allows you to bring more to your life. And so I find myself increasingly, and by the way, I'm still figuring this out. So I'm not coming to you about this from a place of like, here's, everything I've learned.
You don't have all the answers. That's why you're here today. Come on now.
I definitely don't have all the answers.
I'm here for your stories.
I've been someone in my life who has been used to saying yes to a lot of things and has consistently overestimated the amount I can do, the amount of things that I can cram into a day or a week or a month, and consistently leaves myself with an enormous to-do list that's unfinished at the end of every day because of the amount that I load on. And the effects of that, I think, are not good. You know, I think that whilst you can still achieve an incredible amount that way, but it doesn't leave me feeling great because you're always looking at this list that you didn't get to. You're always looking at what you didn't do, and you could have done brilliant things. But while everyone else is saying, look at what you've done, you're going, but look at what I didn't do. And so that was my tendency for a long time. I'm saying all of this because when you ask me what are the fundamentals today, I look at my day and I try to get out of the old habits I have of waking up stressed before the day has even begun, because I'm anticipating everything that I'm going to have to do today that I decided.
Right.
No one came down from on high and said, Matt, this is everything you have to do today. Even if it's my staff or my people around me or whatever saying, but we need this from you and that from you and that from you. I did that. I created that. They didn't appear out of nowhere. I built a business. So I've created all these demands on my time, and then I add my own to it as well. And so I try to have a simplicity about the way I view my day now, where I say there's only a handful of quite simple things that need to happen for me to have a great day. It's not this crazy schedule and this, that, and the. There's a few things that need to happen. One, I need to do 2 great hours of work.
Great.
And by that, I don't mean that's how long I'll be working today, because anyone who runs a company and knows that you work a lot longer than that. But most of the time we say we're working, we're kind of working.
It's true.
Right? It's like the kid who's at college and they're like, I've just been in the library studying for the last 11 hours. You're like, no, you haven't.
Or on social media.
You've been studying for 3, maybe 2.
Yeah.
You have not been studying in the library for the last 11 hours.
Right.
We don't have that much in us, energy-wise. Our cognitive bandwidth is not going to allow us to do that. So we only have a couple of, I truly believe, and I think neuroscience confirms this in some form, that we only have a couple of really great hours in us a day. And using them wisely is one of the fundamentals to me. That if I'm currently writing a book or if I'm trying to make something special, those couple of hours need to be focused on that very cognitively demanding task. If I lose them, I never quite get them back. If it gets to 4 p.m. and I still haven't done that thing,
right,
the chances of me getting that back are slim. And I won't have that good feeling that sort of stays for a lot of the day when I wake up and do something difficult. And then for the rest of the day, I have that. I really believe when people say enjoy the process when it comes to the gym. Fine. If you can learn to enjoy the gym, that's awesome. That's a good thing. But that's not necessarily why you go. You go to the gym for an hour of discomfort so that the other 23 hours feel better. That's a good trade.
True.
I like that trade.
There's a lot.
I don't have to love the gym. I have to love what it makes me feel for the other 23 hours. And for me, I boil my life down to a set of fundamental criteria that really boils down to a small set of things that if I tick those boxes each day, life's going to be pretty good. So one of those criteria is 2 great hours of meaningful work on something that I really want to create or do. That's not phone calls and emails and whatever. That's meaningful work on something I'm making, something I'm creating.
Yeah.
Movement is another one of my criteria. And the cool thing about criteria, the way I think about them, is that you can chunk up or you can niche down. So like if you take, I could have said when it comes to movement, like my favorite activities are boxing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love both. But here's the problem with, like, you can say every day I need to box or every day I need to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in order to feel good. But you always have to be aware that what that's giving you is if you chunk up, something more abstract. It gives you a feeling of whatever it may be. Like, for example, if you ask someone who dances every day, what do you love about dancing? Mm-hmm. They'll often say the same types of things. Well, I love getting into my body. I love that feeling of getting out of my head. I love that feeling of freedom that comes when I do that, of abandon. I love the creativity. I love the, connecting with something like music, or there's something bigger going on there than the movements in salsa dancing.
Right.
And it's really important to remember that, because when you chunk up, you realize that your criteria are quite simple, and there are thousands of ways to meet each criteria. And I haven't been able to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a year and a half now, or a year, because of the pandemic. I need to be able to chunk up to what this gives me, and then chunk back and then niche down again to something specific that allows me to fulfill that in a different way. Whether it's boxing, whether it's training at the gym, whether it's getting into running or whatever.
So you're saying movement.
So
you're like
movement is the
breaking it
bigger
down to movement. You like, so like the fundamental is movement,
Correct.
but then you're like, I like these
Correct.
things, but I can kind of go over here with it or there.
And if you said to me today, Matt, do you want to go on a hike? And I said, but I was going to box today. It's good to be able to switch it out and be like, well, this still ticks that criteria for me.
Sure.
So as long as, if I see my day as a kind of, every day, it's about, did I actually do these fundamental things in some form? I need some form of connection every day. One day it might be calling my mum. A different day it might be spending some quality time with a friend and having a meaningful conversation. So there's different ways to meet that every day. But I do know every day I need some form of connection. I know that every day I need to absorb something if I can, whether new information, new learning. Now that could be from a podcast, it could be from a book, it could be from a conversation, but I need to feel like I'm absorbing something new. And if you add up all of these criteria, it only amounts to 4 or 5, 6 maybe things. And if I wake up every day and say, okay, my day's full, but I'm only achieving one of my criteria in all of that, which is what happens when we get way out of balance.
I was just going to say, total imbalance.
Right. And that's happened to me before, where I'm achieving an extraordinary amount in my work and deeply unhappy. And that's because my full being isn't being expressed. But the danger in life is that if a certain part of your criteria gives you a ton of validation, you can get addicted to it. So if your work is something that, every day you do it and it keeps giving you accolades and trophies and attention, and everyone comes up to you and says, it's amazing what you did. Like that thing.
Why are you talking about me? Why are you just looking at me and saying these things to me? I'm just kidding.
But it's a real.
It was my old life, but
I
fortunately, it didn't have to be my existence. It dominated my time, but by no means was my means to an end.
But what we get the most validation for, validation creates mutation. And whatever people feed our ego on is often the thing that becomes mutated in our life. You see that physically with people who are obsessed with the gym, and you get the guy with the...
Why are you still talking about me?
In every way you see it. And but you said something interesting, I heard, where you said, you were asked about race car driving, and you said, I didn't love it. That's exactly in line with what I'm talking about here, because you didn't, if you stopped there, people might get the wrong impression. They might get the impression, oh, so she was never happy. She never enjoyed it. She never.
Right.
No. What was important was what you said after that. So you said, I didn't love it. There were aspects of it I loved.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? It allowed me to set a goal and achieve that goal. It allowed me to have something to focus on, to master. So what you're really describing there is not this answer to your happiness prayers in racing. It's something that for a time allowed me to meet some of my criteria.
Yeah, that's so, wow, thank you for like unpacking me right there. That's true. I mean, that makes sense that there's just like, yes, there was certain aspects or criteria within that job that were fulfilling me. And yes, there was an imbalance probably because there wasn't enough sort of aspects or buckets to like in the day, but that's why I could keep doing it too. We can use anything as a means to, like you said, through movement. You could be doing jiu-jitsu, you could be doing hiking, there's tons of ways to do movement, right? So there's tons of ways to set a goal and accomplish it. And for me, it was very like racing was that thing for so long, amongst many others, but that makes perfect sense.
And I wish that everyone could hear you say that, because I honestly think that is one of the most important messages. Hearing from you, someone who has achieved on an extraordinary level on something that, you know, A, has so many fans, but B, would be seen, whether by fans or not, as a kind of like situation where someone's found their calling. Right. I think for people to hear that is an incredible pressure valve and incredibly necessary, because we have this myth of the calling. You know, we're always like, people say to me, Matt, you found your calling. I'm like, no, I haven't. I found something that meets my criteria. There are 100 of those. There's many. Like, and by the way, there will be many. My life is going to evolve and it's going to change direction. And I'm going to, in 10 years, I'll be speaking about other things, new things. I'll have evolved. So I don't want anyone to come along and tell me I found my calling, because that pigeonholes me. I want to, don't reduce me to one thing. I'm not that simple. But we have a society that, especially these days, is all about follow your passion, follow your calling, find your purpose. And it sounds like it's motivational talk, but I actually think it's the opposite, because it freaks people out. It freaks them out when they don't know what their passion is. It freaks them out when they have many passions and they're like, so I'm supposed to just do one thing? Like this has to be the be all end all of who I am on this earth? I have many things I love. It freaks people out when they look at other people and who are really successful and have a false impression of what that thing is like. They're living their bliss because they've found their calling and their purpose, and it's just not like that. I know people see me on stage at my retreat, and I know for a fact, because people come to me and they're like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, what is it you think I do? They're like, well, I want to like you on stage and I want to be there. Well, guess what? My retreat happens twice a year.
Yeah, it's a byproduct.
For 6 days. So that means 12 days of 365 days of the year are me on stage doing that. Most of the rest of my year is me at home on a laptop, like running a team remotely through Zoom. That's most of my year. If you say, I want to be a speaker, that's actually a very different path than what I do, because speaking is this much of what I do. And then there's being a CEO of a company. And then there's all these different things, managing a team. And we have these false perceptions. And I genuinely loved when you said that, because I was like, everyone needs to hear this, because they would take some pressure off themselves and say, 1,000 things could be my thing. My job is not to find my one true calling. My job is to do a thing and to make sure that it's a thing that meets some of my criteria. And as I go, to try and craft that thing to meet more of my criteria. because it's a sculpting process.
It's almost like a little bit of a parallel to a person, to who you are as a person. It's like I felt so fortunate that in my career I was able to show all these different like aspects of myself as a person, where I was like, you know, I'm the girl on a cover of a magazine and I'm in a swimsuit, or I'm, you know, giving a speech, or I'm, you know, in my racing and hardcore, or, you know, there's so many different ways, and I could I was able to show all these different sides of me, and I was always trying to remind people that they're all me. Like, don't think that I just have to be this race car driver. Like, I'm all these other things. I want to be funny. I want to be cool. I want to be smart. I want to learn. I want to be sexy. I want to, like, there's all these other aspects of me. And it's similar that, you know, why can't we, why do we have to be one thing? And why do you always just have to be Matt, the relationship guy? And what if you want to be Matt,
the guy talking about what we're talking about today? Because we've not, you know, people ask me a lot of dating questions. We're having a great conversation, and we're not talking about dating for any of it yet. You know, we might, that's fine. But so far, anyone who knows me online as the dating guy for the last 20 minutes has suddenly realized, oh, wow, he's got more to say. And it's actually important. The world will constantly try to put you in a narrative because we like things to be simple. It's true. We want narratives we don't have to continually adjust to. We want to say, yeah, this person's that person's that, or whatever. Like, it's easy. And also, by the way, it doesn't affect our identity if someone stays in their place. This is a whole other concept that I'm fascinated by. But like, if someone, the moment you change something about yourself, it affects everyone that knows you. Not just, you could affect them in a positive way where they get inspired by it, but it could all equally make them feel like, well, wait, hang on, you stay in your place. Why is Danica Patrick talking about health and wellness and what? Like, why doesn't she just stick to this thing she knows? But when we do that, there's a kind of insecurity we have that if they switched gears and if they're talking about something else, then maybe my story about like I have to stick in my lane is not true. But then I'd have to be brave enough to step out of my lane and do something different. I don't want to do that. So I'd rather believe that we're sort of on our set paths, and we tend to critique someone and bash them until they get enough credibility to where it no longer is productive to bash them, because we're now like, well, they're too far gone. Like, you know, I'm sure there was a day where people looked at Joe Rogan and were like, who does he think he is? Like a radio show host or something? Like, this isn't it. He should stick to, you know, fighting and comedy. Yeah. Like, this isn't his thing. And of course, there's a certain point where it becomes undisputable that, well, he's like one of the biggest podcasters in the entire world.
So to me, I see this like, to me, it's like we see this in our society so much with people that have to change their belief systems. Maybe it's religious, maybe it's political, whatever it is, or even just be open-minded, is that they tend to have this sort of regimented cognitive dissonance with their own world, that they're not able to think differently, because as soon as they look at one of those foundational aspects of their life differently, then to me, I describe it like it's like a house of cards. As soon as you pull one of those bottom cards out, then or maybe it's even looking at the government, like questioning things that outside of you. But as soon as you sort of take your belief structure or something that you believe about somebody else and pull that card out, what does it mean? And so for me, it means that you have now you have accountability for your life, and that you could change it, that you're in charge of it, that it could look different, that you might have to, that you have to see yourself in a whole new way. And that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's very scary. To change your mind about things is effort. And it's even more effort and more scary when we have built our identity around those things that we believe.
Right.
Because it leaves us with an existential problem of, if I don't believe this, then who am I? If I'm not someone who's who's really good at this thing and that's what they do, then who am I? You know, I remember making a conscious decision. I started what I do at an unhealthy age to start what I do. You know, I was 20.
Young. I don't know if it's unhealthy.
No,
but
definitely. It's unhealthy.
definitely unhealthy.
And I'll tell you why, because at 20 or 21, being admired for having lots of answers is a very dangerous thing.
And then that's all the girls that you psychoanalyzed along the way. No, I'm just kidding.
That's been okay. It'd be harder if I had built an army of men who were
or men. Sorry, I don't want to.
I got a lot of attention at an early age for having answers and being good at it.
How old are you now?
33. The danger of that is that your validation becomes your mutation, right? I now say I'm getting a lot of attention and a lot of support and a lot of validation for being right about things. That can easily send you down a path of thinking, my whole life now, who knows anything at 21, right? I knew some things, but clearly had so much to learn. So it's a very dangerous thing to get attached to the identity of having the answers at an age where you should be open and exploring and asking lots of questions and trying to absorb. And I remember getting to a point in my 20s where I said, I can be one of two things going forward. I can either be the guru type who like keeps having all the answers and keeps knowing, you know, you ask me a question, I've always got the answer. I could be that, or I can increasingly show my flaws, what I'm worried about, what I'm insecure about, what I'm struggling with, what I'm trying to learn, and let people see that, because that's a more sustainable personality. You know, like that's something I can grow with. That allows me to grow. And B, I'm not constantly needing to play like I know what I don't know.
It's cleaner.
I can just know what I know and not know what I don't know, and sometimes not even be sure of what I know.
Right.
When someone gets attached to their identity, their opinions, their way of thinking, it's very stifling. And letting go of it, we want to know why people find it hard. You're wrong. You're clearly wrong. How do you continue to believe this? We're very quick to look at the facts of someone's beliefs, but we don't look at beliefs in the same conversations as needs. And you have to look at both in the same conversation, because so many beliefs have nothing to do with facts. They just have to do with needs. This idea makes me feel, you can have someone politically who needs something in order to feel better than everybody else. I need to align with this party or this belief system because it makes me feel righteous.
Is this like grand scale codependency?
Well, it's like there's no nuance now in an argument, because your argument isn't about seeking truth. It's about feeling better than everybody else. We get people who attach themselves to some religious beliefs where it's just about security, as opposed to whether that particular idea about a religion makes any sense. It's about, I need to feel secure and this thing makes me feel secure. And we rarely evaluate the needs that underpin beliefs, that make people believe something and make it very hard to give up something. That's not what I think we all have to do for ourselves, is look at, what am I going to attach my importance to? Or what am I going to attach my significance to? If I attach my significance to being right, then I'm not going to take many risks to be wrong.
Totally.
And that's going to make my life smaller. If I attach, I like to attach some of my significance to just looking for truth. And if I attach significance, but if that's the case, then if I say something today where I'm like, said that, but I don't really agree with it. I don't know why I said it. I'm annoyed that I said it. Instead of being like, having to pretend like I do think that was the right thing and defend it, I can just be like, I said this thing on the Danica Patrick interview, which actually I don't even agree with. And she actually made a better point about this. And that's what I'm going to believe from now on, because I actually think she's more right about that than I am.
Wasn't that simply just being open-minded?
But in order to be open-minded, you do have to let go of certain attachments. I have to let go of that need to be right all the time.
Or to validate what you think is right.
Yeah. And if I think, like, it even comes down to my relationship with my audience. If I say, do I want a relationship with my audience where I teach them that I'm right all the time? Or do I want to have an identity with them that says, hey, I'm Matthew Hussey. I am probably going to get it wrong a lot. But I promise you, I'm always going to be looking for the most truthful answer to your problems and the things you're struggling with. And I'll tell you my most truthful answer at the time. And if at any point I get better information, I'm happy to discredit anything I've ever said to give you a better version of what I know today. If I have that relationship with my audience, then I can truly be powerful, because they know they can trust what I'm saying. They don't know that they can trust what I'm saying is always right, but they know it's always the truth for me at that moment.
Sure.
And they know that at any point I'll revise anything I've said. If my significance comes from that, now we have a route to true mastery.
Where have you learned these great sort of insights? Actually, let me back up. I want to ask about ego first, because it feels like a lot of this has to do with the relationship with the ego, which would be that part of us that wants to be right, needs to be right, validated. I love the old saying, like, the ego is impatient because it knows its time is limited, but the soul is patient because it knows it has forever. So, what is the role of it, and how do we work with it? Because I think it has a function, a great function, but it can override so many things. So what's the role of the ego?
That's such a big question. I'm still kind of playing with this idea, because
perfect. Your truth right now.
Because I have a boxing trainer, Martin Snow, who whenever I'm in the ring, one of his favorite phrases is "kill your ego," because he's like, the moment you get in the ring and you're sparring and you see a person who has better technique than you, or is bigger than you, or is faster than you, or whatever, that's ego. Like, you're immediately sort of bringing your ego into the equation. He said, you're not fighting a person, you're fighting a style. He said, forget the person.
Because your insecurity peaks up to counteract the attack on your ego of like, I'm the best. Oh, wait, their technique's better. And it's a response to the ego.
Yeah, like I'm putting myself in competition with a person instead of just being like, I'm not fighting a person, I'm fighting a style. And he would always say to me, kill your ego. And the moment I would start to, in boxing, you burn a lot of energy just in the way you tense up and you breathe, especially when you have a real prospect of getting hit. The body suddenly starts working differently than when you're hitting a bag. You have a lot more energy hitting a bag than hitting a person, because there's no fear involved. Ooh. The moment you're in a ring, and now all of a sudden there's the adrenaline and there's the fear and you're burning a lot of energy just tensing up. And that's why you could put two people in a ring, and you can have a boxing trainer who is far more out of shape than the person they're coaching. Like, some of my boxing trainers have been incredibly out of shape, right? They're like, Martin is like a guy in his 50s who's like, he's not training every day. He's not like, he's out of shape, but he'll still run rings around me because he's more relaxed. Because he's not like tensing up in the ring. I'm burning all of this energy.
An analogy for like a resistance, when you like with 100%. Certain things emotionally or mentally, it's like, sort of attachment creates resistance. It's sort of like almost similarly like the ego creates the resistance.
That's right. And that's where the ego is the enemy. And you know, for me on stage,
Ryan
it's
Holiday.
a similar thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Here goes the enemy.
On stage, I think what really helps me to shed stage fright is, instead of thinking I need to look cool on stage, just thinking I really care about these people, and I actually want them to, I want to try in the time I have with them to give them as many things as I can that can help them. And when I think about it like that, I don't think about it in terms of looking good. I think about it in terms of making an impact. And that immediately dissolves so much of the fear associated with when I go on tour, getting on stage. There's always some nerves. It's not like I shed my nerves completely, but I know that if I'm too nervous, it's because I've made it all about me. And I therefore think that ego is a very dangerous thing. But there's a friend of mine who always jokes. He's like, I want to write a book called, you know, Jameson Jordan, who films my content. He always jokes. He's like, yeah, but I want to write a book called In Defense of Ego.
Oh.
He said, because I like think that ego is kind of important sometimes, and it is, and I wonder about that, because ego does make us.
Okay, so the good role. So now let's literally vet that out on that side of it, right? So you just said kill the ego. Now, like, in defense of the ego, what would you say? Or what would he say?
I think that, I mean, look, ego has been responsible for an enormous amount of my achievement in my life. A lot of the things that now give me and my family security and financial independence and a better life have come from I tell a lie. They started from a place of real insecurity. Like, I want my family to be okay. I want us to be able to, you know, I don't want us to have financial problems later on. And so there was a lot of that for me at the beginning, real survival stuff. But once survival is no longer the game, because, you know, everything's not burning down, and you look around and you're like, okay, everyone's okay now. That's where ego starts to come in and say, yeah, but we could be here. And I think that there's a lot of things I've done because of the excitement of, if I create this thing, it's going to be really great. And there's some of the intention is it's going to help people. And some of the intention is it's also going to make me look really good because I've, you know, said it really well. You know, I've crafted an amazing speech. I've written an amazing book. There's, you know, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some element of that in there when you write a great chat. But that's the interplay between ego and intention. Because for me,
intention, so powerful.
When I write,
it's the whole point, in my opinion.
Well, I think the intention that
it's the intention of wanting to help the people in the audience versus the ego going like, I'm on stage, I'm the guy, right? Like the intention of wanting to be the guy is you want to help people, but you got to be the guy to help people. Yeah,
I think though, I always think about it in terms of a car. Ego.
Oh, I'm sure I'll get this then.
I didn't craft this specifically for you. You must be sick of car metaphors.
No, I think they're great.
I think about it in terms of there's in the car at all times is my best intentions and my ego. They're both in the car. I never fully get ego out of the car. But the seats in the car matter. So when I start writing a chapter of a book, or when I start crafting a speech, the intention is, I know this is a concept people really need to hear. Like, I know this is something people, or even like if I make a weekly video, I've been making a new weekly video for 9 years now. Every time I make a video, it starts from a place of, and before every video, I ask the same question. I usually have a crisis right before a video where I've crafted it all, scripted it all. And then I get right before the video and I'm like, this video sucks.
Oh my God.
And I'll look at Jameson and I'll be like, why are we even doing this video? But that question is really important.
The girls want to know, okay? The girls want to know.
Well,
and the guys need to know. No, I'm just kidding.
But it always does come down to that question sounds at the time silly, but it's actually the most important question is, okay, we've done all the work. We've scripted this video and what we want it to be about and so on. Why does this video even need to exist? Like, why is it important we do this video? And if we can't answer that question well, it's a problem. It means we're actually not aligned.
Do you have times where you can't answer it?
Huh?
Do you ever have times where you can't answer it, or do you always have an answer for it?
There are times where I think it rarely means we don't do the video. What it often means is, you know what, we've been making it about all of this stuff. At its core, it's about this. You know, if we're doing a video about like what to do, you know, what to do
when he ghosts you.
Right. Let's take that, right? What to do when he ghosts you. Now, on its surface, it's like, really, we have to make a video about this? Like, the ghosting is a very term I am bored of, you know, but then when you boil it down and say, well, hang on, like, why do we need to do this? Well, when you like someone, at its core, what's the problem with ghosting? It's that you like someone, you had hopes for what it might be. And then not only does it not turn out to be that, but it leaves you with this horrible sense that you're not even important enough for someone to communicate with. That, you know, what is wrong with me that someone wouldn't even think to, and maybe I'll never know. Maybe there's something deeply wrong with me and I'll never even know what it is. We have anger towards the person, but really it's like this deep hurt and this fear of, I'm worthless. I am worthless. I couldn't keep the person. I couldn't even get a baseline level of decency. Like, if ghosting is troubling us, it's different to be like, wow, that person ghosted me. I don't want them in my life. That's one thing. But when it's troubling us, we know that it's not to do with them. Because if it's just to do with them, you just go, well, I just don't want them in my life.
Right.
But why is it sticking with me? Mm-hmm. It's sticking with me because it's really made me question my own value. And so if we get to that video, which on the surface, the title makes it sound like like surface level, silly dating advice video, what to do when he ghosts you. But if right before the video, I sit with Jamison and I go, why do we need to make this video? And we say, you know what? We need to make this video because this actually, beneath all of the like silly conversations that we have with friends and whatever, when someone ghosts us and I hate this person, what an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Beneath all of that is like real pain. People are actually suffering because it's made them question their own value. Mm-hmm. This isn't a video about ghosting. This is a video about reminding people of their value. All right, now I'm making the video.
A reframe. And you also have connected with emotions.
The core of what this thing is about. Did you see the film Inception?
Love
that film. There's a moment in that movie it's so important. And spoiler alert, go forward 5 minutes in this interview if you don't want to hear this.
If you haven't watched it, it's been
probably
around
past
for
the
a
point,
minute.
right? It's fair game now.
Yeah.
There's a moment where they're trying to get this guy to make a different decision. Mm-hmm. They need to go into his dreams, into his subconscious, and get him to make a decision that he wasn't going to make. And the decision is, he has this huge monopoly on an industry and they need him to break up the business so that it doesn't become a corrupting influence in the world. And they're trying to figure out, how do we infiltrate this guy's brain to get him to make this decision? And the way they do it is they say, we need to tap into the deepest well of emotion that this guy has, the relationship with his father. And what they realize is, if they can go into his subconscious and convince him that his father deep down, all he wants really in life is for his dad to be proud of him. Mm-hmm. That deep down his father, more than anything else, more than wanting him to be this great business tycoon, would be most proud of him if he went on his own journey and did things his way. Mm-hmm. If we can convince him of that, then that will be the thing that makes him break up the company. And so that's what they do. Now, that's tapping into the deepest why that's available to that guy. Now, the reason I say all of this is because when I go to make a video and I'm asking these kinds of questions, that boils things down to the purest of intentions. Now, let's say I make the video, and because it came from such an authentic place, and because I really connected with the concept, and because I did it really well, it goes viral. And because it goes viral, thousands and thousands of people are commenting and going, oh my God, this video is amazing. And more than that, they're going, this man is a genius. Right? Not just the video is amazing. This man is a genius. They're sharing, they're tagging friends. I love this guy. You have to watch his videos. All of that now is not feeding necessarily intention, but ego. And where intention was driving the car to get that video made, somewhere without me realizing it, ego took the wheel, and intention is now a passenger. How do I know? Because I'm nervous about the next video.
So it's cyclical.
Well, the success of this video has made me go, I'm really nervous about the next one now, because people really loved this one.
I gotta make it either better, or at least it's really good too.
Now I know intention is now a passenger, or is maybe not even a passenger in the front seat. Maybe intention is now in the back seat. And ego is driving, and I know because I'm nervous, much more nervous than I was a week before. What changed? Not my ability to make a great video. What changed is all the attention that I got and the way things people said. So when it comes to defense of ego, I think that at some point in our life, we probably can all point to something that we achieved or did, where the result came, we did something quite difficult or quite amazing in some cases because of ego.
Yeah.
I perhaps the answer is that as we get wiser, we realize that ego as a fuel is a really toxic fuel, because no matter what I achieve, it will never be satisfied.
Totally, it's insatiable.
So it's more about consciously saying, I'm going to let good intention, pure intention be the fuel. And you still have fuel. It's just a cleaner burning fuel than ego. And that's what I'm trying to do these days, is recognize that whilst the ego has created a lot of good things in my life, not just ego, by the way, still good intentions, but, you know, a contaminated mix of the two, that more and more I want good intention, pure intention to be in the driving seat.
I think that personally, I think that all information is carrying frequency, and it's through that intention and through the purity of it and how clean it is the frequency. Like people can feel that resonant frequency. So the information coming out of their mouth, it's like, what do I use? Like you going to work and you're like, oh, I hate my boss. Screw this. I don't want to see him. And then you walk in, he walks in and oh, hey, bud, good to see you. Oh man, yeah, nice to see you. How was your weekend? And like the frequency underneath is a lie. It's a big fat lie. And so we're having this, there's like a mass confusion. It's the mask of mass confusion, that the information coming out of us doesn't always resonate with the frequency that is truly there. And so we feel the frequency even though we don't know we're feeling that.
I agree.
But that's why, so if I'm going to guess or use my, information in my head about all of these different concepts, is that's why your videos hit, is because you connect with the intention. So the frequency of the information is resonating with people. So not only do they get good information, but they feel it too.
I 1000% agree. And for anyone out there, because we do register it, when there's a fakeness, an inauthenticity, we register it on some strange level. I would actually say, in all of the videos I've ever done, there's always been an authenticity, but fear played too much of a part in the early stages of you know, wanting to sound a certain way, wanting to be perceived a certain way. And that was all fear talking. And the older I've gotten, and I've got a long way to go, but the more I become a bit like, I don't know what the word is. I become a bit like, fuck it.
Yes.
Like,
oh my God, my saying's, oh well.
Right. Yeah.
Fuck it. Oh well.
It's the same. I kind of think, you know what? I come to this podcast, video, interview, whatever, thinking.
You rolled up today and said, fuck it. Oh well, however this goes.
In sort of.
Yeah.
You know, I come and I'm just like, whatever you ask me, I am just gonna be the most. Be yourself sounds very trite, and I'm wary of that advice, because I think it's not. Being yourself isn't the same as, like, you still want to bring your best. You still want to try your hardest at something. Being yourself isn't like, go ahead, Danica, like, ask away, whatever you want. I'm just gonna lay back in my chair and be myself. It's like, no, I still want to lean into the conversation and give my best, but I really want to just answer in a way that makes me walk away feeling good about me.
You know, what's so funny is that I always do prep before every interview, and so I did some, of course. But normally I would come up with, 2 pages of just kind of like general questions, and then I kind of organize my thoughts, and I have a flow. And I at least have an outline for what I want to ask. And, I know your work so well because I've watched so many videos, but there's also so many different sort of aspects of like the human experience that you could speak to. And so I kind of didn't even know where to start. And I was like, I'm just going to trust the flow of this. I'm just going to, like, I could show you, I have like 5 things written on the notepad. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to trust that we're going to sit down and it's just going to come out and it's just going to flow. And thank God, because you know what? I feel as though you're in a transition where I'm glad that I didn't come up with, tell me the 3 things that we should look out for when it comes to, so I met you and you met me, like we literally met each other right at the same place. I think that's a very interesting thing. Actually. It's
really interesting. And I feel very grateful that you did that, because I definitely am in a transition. I definitely am. It's weird. I want to say I hit like 28, and when I was 27, I had a moment, like a little crisis moment, where I was like, probably not a little crisis moment, that's me underplaying it. I had a crisis moment where I was like, this should feel better than it does. Like I'm really like, I could literally tick off so many of the things that at 21 I would have said, like, these are the things, whether it's like be a New York Times bestseller or like do tours around the world, live in America. That was like a dream, was the idea of like living in the States. And something wasn't right. And I sort of slowed down, like tried to take stock more and reevaluate things. And I actually mellowed a decent amount for a couple of years. Yet you only
got exponentially more popular.
Well, the funny thing is, over the last 1.5 to 2 years, I felt newly inspired. And that's been challenging because...
Oh, in what way?
Because I've taken on so much again. And like my inspiration is like, I'm like, I got so many ideas, and I really feel like there's so much I'm excited to talk about right now, and there's so much I'm excited to say, and it makes me go, yeah, let me do that. Let me write another book. Let me do it. Let me take on this. And before I know it, I've sort of wedged myself back into a place of insanity where there's so much going on and so much.
And are you energized or are you tired?
Well, energized, but it's really difficult because it's easy to take on a ton of things because you're inspired.
Yeah.
Right? But then you can get to, Guy Winch, a friend of mine, he talked to me and said, like, because I was saying to Guy, I was like, Guy, I don't know if you know Guy, an amazing therapist. And I remember saying to Guy, like, Guy, I'm like, I need to figure out how to, like, I should be enjoying more. Like, this is really amazing. I want to enjoy it. And I'm taking on so much and I'm loving my work, but I'm also like, I'm stressed. Like, I'm really stressed. And he had this great concept, and I want to make sure everyone knows this is Guy's concept, not mine.
I love that you're mentioning a therapist, and you're basically a therapist.
I'm a different line of work, but I actually believe crediting is extremely important. I know it's off subject, but I think one of the worst traits of the internet right now is the lack of credit that goes to people for the things they say. That people are so quick to take something and just speak it without talking about where they got it from or who, without attributing. I think it's very poor form. But Guy actually said to me, you know, everyone has this subjective kind of bar above which everything becomes overwhelming, below which things are more enjoyable. Sure. And the problem is if you go above that bar, even a little bit, even the things that you previously enjoyed can suddenly start being corrupted by the overwhelm and the stress you have, and you stop enjoying even the things that you were enjoying. He said, sometimes just bringing things, it's not about like take 6 months off and go to India and meditate. It's about bringing things just below the bar. If you're a bit above the bar, bring things just below the bar again, and you'll know when you're below it because you'll feel it. You'll feel differently. Yeah. And my tendency is when I feel good, I'm so extreme. Like I'm too extreme. I have a problem. Like
well, I mean, dude, the name of this podcast is called Pretty Intense, so I get it.
There are times when I'd be worthy of that title, but it's so extreme. Like I'll wake up on a Saturday and I'll be like, I'm so glad I've got the whole day free. Like, because the last 5 days will have been insanity. And I'll be like, I've got the whole weekend. I'm not going to plan anything. I'm just going to enjoy the weekend. And then I'll be like, I kind of feel like training today. I'm going to go train today. And I'll
same day
call up a trainer and I'll be like,
same day that you're so excited that you have
same day
time off.
Within probably an hour later, I'll be like, do you have any training? Yeah, okay, I booked that in 5 o'clock. Maybe I should like go on a hike.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like,
nice relaxing afternoon.
You know what? I'm going to clear out the garage. I've been meaning to do that. And then before I know it, I have booked this manic day. And
this kind of sounds like something I might do.
Yeah, and I look at that and I have to remind me, and I have people around me that know me very, very well. And they're like, are you watching yourself? Like it's very easy for me to suddenly go above that bar again because I'm feeling good, right? I start to oversubscribe every part of my life to the point where it's above the bar. And now what happens is you're in danger of a crash. Now there's a kind of, especially in our line of work, where you have attention and you have validation and there's lots of like stimulation. There's a sort of speedy feeling to it all that can get you running for quite a long time at a ridiculous intensity because it's got this like speedy edge to it. But you're always in danger of like, once you hit a level of like, everything short circuits. And now I'm like, cancel everything. I don't want to do it. Like, this is all too much. I can't handle.
Or you turn into a giant asshole. And nobody's safe around you. I'm sorry, that's what I do.
You do that? I get quiet. I get very quiet.
Oh, really?
And everyone's like, yeah,
no.
I sometimes, usually before events, I'm so loud on stage, but before an event, I'm so quiet. People come up to me, and if they've just started working for me, they'll be like, is he okay? Is there something wrong? And everyone who knows me will be like, no, he's fine. He's just...
Are you like organizing your thoughts, or are you hit max capacity?
It's a sort of. It's because I know I so badly want to do a good job that I just kind of get very insular. Yeah, it can be insular. It can be ego, but I'm always having to manage that thing, and that's what I'm trying to. The reason I say I'm in transition is because I am, my biggest goal in my life right now, let me say this, the most important goal in my life right now is learning to really feel connected to everything as I do it, instead of just like adding because it's like more. Let me just, let me help more people. Let me do this. Let me do that.
How do you make sure you're connected then?
I think
how do you know you are?
Because
how do you know what to say yes to?
What did I do? I did a slot on Entertainment Tonight a few weeks ago, and we were driving back from Entertainment Tonight, and I was with Jameson, and he said to me, we were on our way back to the house, and I said out loud, like, what else do I need to do today? And I was like, I had the adrenaline, and I don't love TV because I don't know. I find it hard to focus on things for the rest of the day once I come off TV. I sort of have this adrenaline, and it just, I don't know, it tires me out. But we were on our way home, and I was like, what do I need to do today? And he goes, well, I'll tell you what we need to do. We still have that video that we need to shoot for next weekend, so we're going to go home and shoot that. I wanted to murder him.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I felt so mad, irrationally mad. I was like and I suddenly turned so grumpy.
Oh my God.
So grumpy. And I was like,
it went above the bar.
Yep. And so for me, the recognition of that is, okay, I know that whatever I'm doing right now, there is a pace, there is a pressure, there is a deadline I've put on myself that is now detaching me from how wonderful everything actually is. And that whilst my ego doesn't want to give me an easier deadline, doesn't want to tell me that this thing that I really want to do today has to now be done later because it's one too many things. Whilst my ego doesn't want to hear that, my happiness, my sense of enjoyment actually does need a different pace in order for all of this in order for me to keep doing a good job, frankly. Like when I started out and it was about survival, sometimes there's a pace that's determined by survival mode.
Sure.
And you do things
for a different one.
Yeah. You do things for a time that you wouldn't do for a lifetime because we need to get out of this situation. Yeah. And I've felt that. But what has taken me time, and still I find catches up with me, is remembering that you're no longer surviving. That it's okay. Nothing's burning down. You're all right.
No lion is chasing you.
Yeah.
We're not in survival
You're
mode.
okay. You can...
No need for FOMO.
Yeah, just do it. And by enjoy this, I'm not going back on what I said earlier about I don't think it's always fun, but enjoyment to me isn't fun. You can enjoy hard things. You can enjoy things that are a struggle because you're enjoying challenging yourself. If that has been sucked out of it, and all that's left is this to-do list that makes you want to strangle everybody, it's because something's broken. And I have done that to myself over and over again. And the reason I talk about, I think you were talking to, was it Alanis Morissette?
Oh, I did. Yeah. We did.
I saw a piece of that interview that was really interesting to me, where she said something about like being the timid, like inside she's like a timid puppy. But outside there's this angry, like aggressive, like take charge type of. And she said that often what we speak about the most is the counterpart to what we feel. And there is no doubt that outside of the dating realm, one of the subjects I've been most passionate about is the ability to enjoy things, to love the journey, to not become overwhelmed by how many different things that you've got going on or the size of the problem that's there in your life. a lot of that has been because in my lifetime, I have experienced those things an awful lot. And I'm always talking to myself on some level. Maybe not. There are some videos where I'm solving a problem that gets put to me a lot and I'm solving that problem. But there's so much of, you know, I never make any bones about it. Like everything, when I talk to people about self-love, I'm passionate about that subject because I am well aware of what a tyrant I am to myself when I'm not practicing what I preach there. Self-love is so necessary for me because I'm terrible to myself.
It's like, I love to sort of share the perspective I have that, you know, when you see someone that you look up to, whether they be a guru or a leader of some kind, spirituality, whatever it may be, a coach, if they're going through a struggle in that very aspect, I'm like, of course they are. Why do you think they're interested in the subject?
Yeah.
You don't become passionate about something because you just it's not, because it's not something you're not dealing with.
Correct.
And so
yeah, that's exactly
I think
right.
it's important for people to understand that they should be, thank God that you gave yourself permission to be that vulnerable guy. So what I hear now, like, I'm curious then, because it seems so natural to just take it from like, okay, so, you know, how do you be in relationships, blah, 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 blah. And so go, what are you actually dealing with now? And you're dealing with transitions. So then, so for me, I think the most applicable thing that it seems like you could share from sort of a coaching aspect would be, what would you say to people as far as, you know, call it red flags or whatever you want to, you know, use terminology that you'd make a video, but what are the signs that you are ready or a transition is calling you? Because it feels like while you're in it, you're kind of, you got the signs. So, because there's a lot of people in that position. I think that we've come off of a year that's just been overwhelming, underwhelming, hard, and you know there's a lot of transitions happening. But then there's just natural ones. You were falling into this transition anyway, without pandemics, without whatever else, and so sometimes these things like this can push us over the edge. But what would you say to people as far as from your experience? That you would say, these are the signs that I would say to look for that are calling you to transition your life?
That's a great question. We have a mutual friend, Lewis Howes.
Yeah.
And at the end of 2019, I got a text from him in December saying, me and a small group of people have got this really fortunate opportunity to go and spend 5 days with Wim Hof, just in a group of like 10 of us, which, you know, Wim Hof has blown up and hundreds of people go to his events and so on. He was like, we have a really unique opportunity just as 10 of us to spend 5 days with him going through this extreme kind of cold exposure.
I'm so cold right now. I could not imagine going to Wim Hof right now. I'm like,
Danica,
can you see me shivering out here?
This is not something that I would ever want to do. Like I'm not a thrill seeker in that way.
Okay.
Like I'm adventurous in my own way, but that's not my idea of like, I need to go and prove that I can sit in the ice for 10 minutes straight up to my neck, or that I can climb the tallest mountain in Czechoslovakia in nothing but my shorts. That's not something I would want to do. And yet something in that moment, Lewis texted me and I was like, okay.
Say yes.
And that to me was a sign, because it wasn't something I wanted to do. But in my head, I thought, I'd been through a difficult year, and I thought anything that shakes my life up right now in an interesting or challenging way is a good thing. In other words, talking about criteria, it wasn't about finding the perfect thing. It was just being like, the thing that was needed was shake up. This fit the bill. I was like, this is going to be hard for me. And I don't associate, it's not like I associate with being wonderful in the cold. Like, oh, I'm going to be naturally good at this. No, I am going to be bad at this. Like, this is not my idea of a good time. I don't like cold water. I've never liked cold water.
Period.
Like, if someone's like, let's get in the pool, it's a bit chilly, but let's get in. I'm always like, I'm good. Unless
Why would we do that?
Yeah, a hot tub.
Why would
let
we
me
do
know. But no, that's not fun to me. And so we went, and it was extreme, and it was incredibly difficult and all of that. But even afterwards, so it felt right. I thought that felt somehow like a weird, clumsy move in the right direction. It felt like it shook me up. It gave me a different challenge. It forced me to do something I wasn't good at. It made me realize how much of my life I'd spent doing things I was good at, and how limiting that can be. So that was a good sign for me, was that on something I would normally always say no to, I felt myself tempted to say yes, and did say yes. Those are interesting signs to watch out for. I think that another sign to watch out for is when the thing that you're really good at, that's worked for you consistently in the past, is no longer giving you the same bang for the buck. Like, it used to scratch that itch, it used to do that thing, and it's like, this is not work. I'm getting diminishing returns from this thing, which I do think is often a sign that life is out of balance. And that we can continue to blindly do more of the same and keep achieving in the same way we always have. But it wasn't going to change your life to get another trophy. It wasn't going to change your life to get another accolade in the racing world. Like, now that's fine if you keep enjoying it, and your life, there's other parts of your life that you love, and it all just kind of works in harmony. There's nothing wrong with continuing to do that. But I do think sometimes you reach a point where you go, I'm no longer growing.
Yeah.
I'm not, I know this game. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's a very different, doesn't mean it's easy, but it's what I know, and it's what I'm comfortable with. And it's a kind of hard that I'm comfortable with, that I inhabit as home. And I then start going, right now I've realized in my life, like, what's necessary for this next chapter of my life is a different set of tools, different software, a different operating system than the one that got me to where I am today.
Do you think that subconsciously we are aware of the old saying, and I believe it to be true, that your new life is going to cost your old one?
I do kind of, to some extent, believe
Relationships, jobs, locations, people.
I think that, well, I suppose I'm always careful of extremes, because I think that if you take that idea to its extreme, you have the justification for, shaving your head and going and living as a monk.
You're an extreme guy. You told me that at the beginning.
I don't think I don't know if that's my style, is going and shaving my head and living with the monks. I do it for a week. I'll do that for a week.
You got the hairstyle for a while, though.
No, I'm going to ask him if I can keep my hair. I'm careful of extremes, but I think that we do have to look at it and say, where do I need to temper the like, this always dominates. This thing over here always dominates, whether it's work or whether could be a relationship. This is the thing that tends to be my dominant thing, my addiction, my whatever. And then saying, I'm going to start proactively investing more energy into a different way of thinking, or this other thing over here that's going to bring me more balance. The danger, of course, of the thing over here that is still present in your life is that if you're not careful, it can slowly start to take hold again or ramp up again, because
it's like a comfort zone.
Right. And you still have your addiction to it. So it's like microdosing. You still, if you're not careful, you still can get your fix there. And I think it's having constant reminders every day.
That's why you just microdose in phases. I'm just kidding. I don't know anything about microdosing.
I just think
but apparently you do.
I like it as a term, because I think we're always, we're all addicts. There is I think addiction has this funny stigma around drugs, like substances. And people righteously love to proclaim that they don't do drugs. I've never done drugs or whatever. And you're like, You did drugs. You just did different ones.
Yeah, you're addicted to that terrible cycle of relationships that you've been in. You're addicted to that hormonal pain cycle you've been putting yourself through for the last however long.
Exactly.
You're
I've watched
totally
you pick
right.
up your phone 10 times in the last 10 minutes. Like, we can get all righteous about, but I don't have that addiction. But it's like, it's all the same thing.
It is.
And I think that it's okay to maintain certain things in your life that have got you to where you are, but to frame them differently. I have both a beautiful relationship with my work and an addict's relationship with my work. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to work anymore. It's an awareness that I need to grow the beautiful relationship I have with my work, and I need to be hyper aware of any time that the addict is taking over, because that becomes avoidance activity. Now it's distraction from whatever it is I need to do over here. That is actually going to be the point of leverage in my life right now for making me happier. Doing this more isn't going to be the thing that changes the game for me now. I did it.
It's like going general. You need to go general with it, and it's not quite so specific. You
need to there's muscles that are underdeveloped.
Yeah.
This is an impressive muscle, what you've done over here, and you keep working it. People are going to keep commending you on what an impressive muscle it is. But that idea that you're only as strong as your weakest link. If outside of that there is a unhappiness, or there's an anxiety, or there's a part of your life that's suffering, or your relationships are suffering because you don't invest in them, or that's going to be the thing that brings down the whole. And that I think is the thing we have to be aware. We want to be doing what we do for a long time. Like, I want to be doing this in 30 years. I want to be still out there being able to be energetic and bring my best to the table. So I have to play the long game on what's going to bring me peace or happiness or de-stress me, because otherwise this thing that I do really well will be a flame that burns out very quickly, and I would like to avoid that.
I think that's incredibly wise of you. You're very wise for 33.
It's easy to talk about. It's harder to do, but I'm working on it.
And thank you for continuing to share and grow, and to grow and share the growth. Because that's vulnerability. It's implying that you can think a new thought, that you can become, you can transition, you can evolve, and it's your fan base, your followers are on the same journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And you, as an interviewer, by the way, are wonderful. You're really. I know that it's. How long have you been doing this for now?
Like a year and a half.
Wow. Well, I think it's safe to say you got me talking about things that I haven't talked about very much. So you're great at what you're doing.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.